Okay. All right. We are live here now with Jill Whalen and Dominic Scaffidi. Is that how you say your name?
Yeah, you did it well.
I think I've heard other people say it. We're maybe not live on Facebook yet, or maybe we won't be, but we're here to talk about fun with feelings today. And basically, I mean, this just kind of came about because Dominic and I were chatting privately on Facebook, and we were talking about how he was in another group meeting of that I was doing, and we were talking about how there was a really nice feeling in that meeting. Everybody was respectful and things, and it was a nice meeting. And then we were also saying how you notice certain teachers, like you can get certain feelings from them that feel, I don't know, legit to me. I think, like, especially in like spiritual teachings and stuff, there's certain teachers that, to me, that just seem to, resonate with me. It sounds true. It doesn't sound like it's their beliefs or their, we were talking about, I think, the Conversations with God book. And the first one of those, I've listened to the audios, and the first one of that was like amazing. It felt really just true, and everything was saying. And then I listened to like the second one, and I was like, what? Like it sounded like so much personal stuff was coming from the guy who wrote it, who I don't remember his name. It just had a different feeling. Like there was no way to, I couldn't, you couldn't say it any other way. It was the feeling in it. And so we thought, and then Dominic has a lot more to say about feelings as well, but we thought we would talk about it because it's such an important thing in life that's often discounted. So go ahead, Dominic, what's your take?
Yeah, first of all, if you've heard any of my podcast interviews, you'll already know I have a lot to say about a lot of stuff. So those podcast interviews, if you get me started on this. But feelings are important from a guidance perspective. They're an indicator of something, and they can provide guidance to us. But I guess probably the starting point would be from the beginning. So you can't really understand what feelings are, or they'll confuse the heck out of you without some understanding of what they're an indicator of. And so all of us will have this. But by the way, it's a couple of things maybe useful at the beginning of this is it's not helpful for you to, you could listen here in many different ways. Like you could listen in this conversation, like what are the parts I agree with? What are the parts I disagree with? It's a very intellectual way of listening. You can assess it and kind of take the information. It's also a very surface way of listening to it. What I'm going to recommend is you just kind of like have it splash over you. and at some point, if anything gets said by anybody which resonates with you, we'll talk about what that means in a minute. But when it resonates with you, what it is it is resonating with what you know to be true. And so when something resonates with what you already know to be true, then that occurs like, oh yeah, of course, that's right. Yeah, I knew that. And even if you didn't actually know it intellectually, suddenly once it's resonated with you, it's like, well, of course, I've known that all along. Right? So that's a useful way to listen, is only pick up that stuff, and then the stuff that you would agree or disagree with, you won't be stuck with it anyway, because you won't have to carry it forward, right? So whatever you agree or disagree with, you can just leave it here. So I'm going to keep pointing to, and I'm going to ask you to listen from your own experience, because words don't teach, but your experience will teach you. Right? So, and by the way, that comment I just made, as well as you're going to hear me quote often. So I may as well acknowledge up front that a lot of what I speak about is grounded in the teachings of Abraham Hicks. And so you'll hear me quote that quite a bit. So we all have had a feeling where we are participating in something. And you know the feeling where you lose yourself. So you're either playing a game or a sport, or you may be running or something, and people have this feeling of losing themselves. That's often how it gets described. You might be doing work that you love, and you get engaged in the work and you start doing that work. And before you know it, like, you actually haven't been paying attention to the time. And sometimes 2 hours, 3 hours could go by, and you wonder where that time went. So that is a feeling where you have lost yourself. And there's something important about that. And without that anchor, the rest of the stuff about feelings and what they do is going to just be confusing. Right? So what that anchor points to is that there is a you that you are, which I'm going to say is far more than you think. There is a you that you are that is far bigger than you think. It is far more than what shows up here physically, and also what is present psychologically, meaning in your thinking. And that you shows up every once in a while, and what you do is you go, oh my God, that was amazing. I did that talk. It was so amazing. But notice that you are surprised with yourself. You walk off the stage and you're like, oh my God, that was incredible. Oh, in that meeting, when that issue came up, wow, I've never said it better. It was right. And notice what's funny about it is you are surprised at yourself. And so there is something going on that is surprising you at this you that showed up. And so if there are different spiritual communities that will, sort of get into that in many different ways. But I'm saying we've all had this experience that what we know is we are far more than we think. And once in a while we get a glimpse of that. Whatever that is for you, that's what I'm pointing to. And Abraham Hicks, they'll call that your inner being, but let's call that who you really are. This is authentically you. It is far bigger. And I'm going to even say that this is infinite, and infinite in possibilities and infinite in potential. Now, I don't say that like some sort of positive motivational speaker. You are infinite potential. What I'm saying is it's true. You have an access to that. There is an intelligence and a consciousness that is infinite. And mostly you're familiar with a focus of that. You are familiar with a limitation of all of that. And that is what we're mostly familiar with, is this kind of little you that walks around and, has a job and makes money and has challenges and all that stuff. But there are these two perspectives. Right? So there's the you that walks around and actually is doing whatever you're doing. And then there's something more, and you all know it. And the reason I say you all know it is you have felt it. Notice we're bringing feelings back. Your access to it is feeling. You cannot think your way there. You cannot think your way into that perspective, because that's intellectual. That leaves you stuck in the psychology that you are. So your access to that is outside of this physical body, right? So, and when you have the connection, when you are engaged in your life, in any activity, be it work, be it in a relationship, be it making love, be it anything, you are at your best when you are not there. So as you lose yourself and what is present is all that you are, is present, engaged in your life, that is a feeling of, people call it flow. It is you know things you didn't think you knew. Words come out of your mouth that you don't even know where they came from. And so there is this feeling of flow and engagement, which is really, you are now showing up as your best. You are showing up, I'm going to call it closer, or forget closer, but let's just say with way more potential than you have had before. And that always feels good. Let's anchor that. It always feels good. When you are closer in alignment to all that you are, you always feel good. And let me say, just to make sure I include everything, you always feel better. So even if you are in a place of real stuckness and bad things going on and all of that, as you get more aligned and more connected with all that you are, it will always feel better. So Abraham will say, nothing is more important than that you feel good. Nothing is more important than that you feel good. Most people will listen to that at a surface level, like that, that means I need to take a bath, and that means I need to, do. It has nothing to do with what you're doing. What it has to do with is in this moment right now. And by the way, it can only be in this moment right now, because it wasn't yesterday and it will not be tomorrow. Your point of power is in the present moment. And in the present moment, are you here in the present moment as all that you are? Or are you here in the present moment as a collection of complaints, judgments, assessments, and some sort of limited thinking about what you are and who you are being present here? So I'm going to pause for a bit to see if there's any questions, comments, buts. And you either raise your hand or we'll do it in the chat or whatever.
Yeah, that's exactly how I see it. Only you're able to put it you're able to put it better into words than I am. I found when we were talking about this on Facebook, people were asking questions about it, and I was just kind of like I knew it, but I couldn't answer them. And you had the appropriate words for it. But even just now, I mean, an example of what you're talking about, as I was trying to get us onto Facebook Live too, and it wasn't happening. I basically missed the first, 3 minutes or more of what you were saying. And I could feel in my head, I'm looking at all my screens, trying to do it. And when I finally just gave up and said, okay, and settled down and started listening to you, the feeling was completely different. I was totally present, heard what you were saying, felt what you were saying, felt that it was coming from your, true self, or whatever the words we want to use for that are. And, you know it when you're doing sports. My husband and I play tennis, and what a difference when when the thinking mind isn't in the game, and when you feel like you're a pro, hitting all the balls, but as soon as you start thinking, oh, maybe I'll hit it this way or whatever, boom, doesn't work. You're back to being the amateur. And that's in life, right? We can be pros or amateurs, but it's something that happens, right? I mean, so maybe this is a good thing to talk about too, right? Do you get yourself in there? Do you put yourself there? I just fell back into it when I found it's a surrender in a way, isn't it?
Oh, that's a great question, because you can, and here's the thing I would say. Whatever makes sense to you from the place you are, that's what you should do. Don't listen to me or anybody else. In other words, when you are not at your best, whatever is making sense to you to do it. So I need to go for a walk. I should meditate. whatever comes to mind for you is guidance. It's guidance. And when that comes to mind for you, you don't overthink it. You can do what you like, right? Now, as you understand, sort of deepen your understanding of what's going on, some things to do will no longer make sense. And the reason I say that is because what we're talking here about is something about achieving an alignment, is being in this moment more than what I normally am. That is, you can't do anything to get there, really, literally. At some point you start to see that that's not even possible. You can get distracted in a bunch of practices. You can do gratitude journals. You can do all kinds of stuff. People, but the doing will never achieve being. It does not work that way. You are a being. You are a being, and the being is expressing in action. You cannot act your way to a state of being. A state of being is either, first off, you're never out of it. You are always in a state of being. And from the state of being, you are acting. Now, you are sometimes in a state of being which is very distorted. And those are those situations where you are with someone or whatever, and now you're getting frustrated. I can't believe what they said. This meeting is going nowhere. We keep spinning. I can't believe this is happening. A lot of my clients, right? We'll get into this. That person is always against me. They're always, every idea I bring up, they will counter. And, so now the frustration starts to raise, all of that. There is a feeling to this, which if we pay attention, just if you understand what's happening there is something going on that is distorting and reducing all that I am in that moment. It is making me smaller and smaller. And that is now who is engaging in this meeting, listening to that other person and talking to that other person. That will always feel bad or worse. When I use these terms, they're not a moralistic good and bad. They are an indicator of the direction that I'm moving. Because we're always moving, by the way. You're never in a state of pure alignment. You're never in a state of flow all the time. It's always it's always like almost, it could be almost like you're always in a state of achieving flow, but you're never actually perfectly in it. Maybe I should say more about that. Okay, if I was, let's call being in alignment, let's call being really open, in a state of flow. I'm getting, client calls. I have opportunities I look at, and this is so great. It's like, I'm with my kids and the conversation is so amazing. And they're saying things that in the past would really trigger me. I'd get angry, or I'd think you're going off track, but it doesn't, right now in this conversation, it doesn't matter. All I feel is love. We're just talking. These are just the most amazing conversation. So there I am in that moment, being in a place of really aligned with far more than I am, maybe usually showing up as. So if we call this alignment, let's call it harmony. I'm in a closer, more harmony with this potential that I am. That means if I move away from it, a word I might use is disharmony. The further I get away from it, I'll be less harmonious to it. So I'm either in resonance, alignment, or I'm disharmony, dissonance. This is sort of the movement that is happening. So a state of harmony would be like a state of balance. So if anybody cycles, you get on a bike and you achieve a state of balance and you go, right? But I'm going to assert that you, in fact, are never in balance. If you are, it's a 0.0001% of the time that you are ever in balance. You are never perfectly balanced. So just like that, we can say alignment would be the same way. So if you look at a kid who's learning to ride a bike, or maybe you've tried to ride a bike at a later age, you get on this bike and you watch that person. They get going, and it's just like a disaster. They're like, right, like they're tipping and coming. Now, so a lot of times they're actually falling. But even if they get riding, they're like, like back and forth happening like this. What happens is over time, because words don't teach, only life experience can. It's an Abraham quote. Words don't teach, only life experience can. So you cannot ever teach someone to do this. You can't teach them to ride a bike. What happens is they eventually, through direct experience, they get a feel from direct experience of what balance actually is. They feel it. And when they feel it, it locks, like that locks in as the North Star. Now I know what it feels like, right? It's why when you go do if you're doing a talk or you're participating in a meeting or you're baking a cake or whatever you're doing, whether you were in flow at your best, and when it was horrible. I was a mess in there, right? So this locked in flow part. So there's balance. Now, again, over time, as that person, with the bike riding, they begin to go in and out of balance like this, much like less. It's smoother. So what's happening is there's more of, let's call it mastery, in an ability to achieve alignment very quickly. And so now you watch them ride a bike, and you and I would watch them, especially a real master, and you and I would watch them and we would say, wow, the way that person achieves balance. But what I'm telling you is they are rarely in balance, but their movement is so subtle. To us, it looks like incredible. This is, they're always in balance. Now, if you keep going with that analogy, once they've achieved balance, or let's call it the state of alignment, they can take that vehicle, our physical body, who we are, our intelligence and all of this. You could, in a state of alignment, you could take this vehicle and ride it to anything, anywhere. Your effectiveness from a performance perspective, from what you're going to be like in meetings, from what you'll be able to do and achieve through action. It's going to be incredible in a state of alignment. But if that person who's riding that bike does not have balance, they will not get very far. That just, they might make it up to the top of the street. But if you get a person in balance, in the same time that person goes up to the top of the street, the guy in balance could be so far out there, 5 times further, 10 times further, again, in that state. I'll pause again. Check in, yeah. Questions?
That's so, it's so true. I mean, it's like, in a way, like a biofeedback machine or something, where the example is great with the bike. You can kind of see it, but that it makes sense then that we're doing that all the time in life too, because we like the feeling of when we're in the flow, when we're in balance, when we're aligned with our true self. So we're always trying to get to that feeling in one way or another. And perhaps the more we're in it, the more we understand how to get in it without thinking about it, by just balancing better.
That's awesome. I'm going to adjust one thing, one word. We're trying to get to that feeling all the time. I'm going to have you consider that this is different. What it is that you are being called to that feeling all the time. It's different.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because actually, as I said it, I started, all of a sudden, all these voices came into my head about all the anxious people wanting to feel better, and
Right.
and
Right.
it's different than that, because that's the trying. So I'm glad that you said that, because it's funny how I knew it wasn't in
Yes,
alignment.
yes, yes.
Uh,
And by the way, this
That's
what you and I just did here, this is exactly the example of what I said earlier, where I said, don't believe this or agree or disagree with it. So I heard something you had already said. Yeah, even as I said it, kind of like wasn't exactly right. And this is the trouble with words, right? We'll say it in words. It's like, well, it's my best attempt, right? And then I said something, and what I said clicked with you. That's it. I know that. That's what I mean, right? So it clicked as, I know that. It's not that Dominic said it and it's better. Dominic said it and, oh, it's so much better the way he said it. That's not it at all. It clicked as, that's what I know. You're right. That's what I know. Right? So this is the thing about this teaching. There's no teaching here. There is a bunch of conversation, and some of it's crap. It'll just disappear. And some of it will be, I know that. I really know that. And all that this is a reminder. It is a reminder of what you know.
And that's why I think, for me, awareness in general in life, and in what's happening in our minds and things, is so important. Like the fact that I was aware, and I heard that little, that little whatever that wasn't quite right. That little bit of awareness, I think that's such a key thing for all of this stuff. But also I wanted to just sort of bring up with you everything you were talking about. It's every single spirituality that you listen to, that I listen to, or read about, or whatever. It's all pointing to this. To me, it's the basis, the building blocks of everything is, whatever words they use. In three principles with the single paradigm, you might say it's the difference between being inside out or outside in. When you're inside out, you're in alignment, you're in the flow. And when you're outside in, you're not. And then, with the Course in Miracles, it's the difference between whether you're listening to the Holy Spirit, they call it, or you're listening to ego. And you can pull up any single thing, and it's always just about this. This is sort of the goal, if you will. But then again, it becomes a trying when it's a goal.
Right.
But it's the key to life. And and the other thing that came up from me was, it's what we think of when we think of geniuses in certain professions and stuff. When the person who works from alignment like that, and that's, if I do say so myself, in my old work, people used to tell me, oh, she's an SEO genius. And, and I'm like, I'm just playing on the computer all day having fun. And so it comes across as genius because I did do it in the flow. And I remember even writing an article about I called it the Zen of SEO, because I just, look at this website and boom, I just knew everything that needed to be done. And those are the people we think of as geniuses, and they're not geniuses. I'm not a mental genius. I just liked doing that, so I was in the flow doing it. And I think, we all have our little things in life that we're geniuses at.
Well, and that is such a great example of how you were accessing kind of an intelligence and a potential as you were doing that work, which was simply flowing through you. Now, the reason people call you genius is because that's a good example, by the way. If I were to do the same work, my engagement with it would contain so much thinking, so much resistance, this isn't easy, this is complicated. I was never good in statistics anyway, and you're going to have to get to the statistics in order to understand this whole search engine optimization thing. I can't believe I have to use statistics when I hated it in school anyway, and now I got to use it again. So no, so what happens is there is so much resistance to me being present with the activity and allowing something to my bigger intelligence to flow. So I look at you, who has an ability of focus. And again, you're going to hear this like she's doing something. I don't mean doing something. I mean, what a more accurate thing is, Jill gets into this work and then loses herself. So it's not about doing something, it's about losing herself. And now all of a sudden she's engaged and involved and lost in it. Well, even just that word, if I say she's lost in it, there's the resistant physical, psychological thinking Jill is lost. That's gone. And what is present is pure potential, possibility, infinite intelligence, engaging with the problem, with the issue. And we look at that and we go, Jill's a genius. I don't even know how she figured that out. And it's no different than anybody else without resistance. Engaged in something without resistance, without that thinking, and it appears as genius.
Yeah.
So, great.
Yeah.
Great.
That's so true. And I'll talk to people even now that are, saying that they're technophobes or something, like you said. And it's the same thing. It's a story. We hold on to these stories. I can't do this. I'm no good at this. I'm whatever. And I'm like, oh, this is fun. and it's just so funny. But yet there's other things that they would say, oh no, this is fun. This is easy. And I'd be like, ah.
So this is very good in that an indicator of your lesser alignment, right? Is you're going to feel it right away. You're going to feel it, and you'll feel it in dissonant, unharmonious feelings, right? So what does that mean? A feeling like peace, joy, clarity, flow. Those feelings, expansive kinds of feelings, that is in the direction closer to all that you are, to the infinite potential that you are. And a feeling of anxiety, I'm worried about this, a feeling of doubt, of hopelessness, I'm going extreme. That feeling is so far away from who you really are that you can feel the difference. So like riding a bike, you can feel right away where you are not in balance, but at least if you're good at it. If you're not good at it, it'll wobble a lot. The more you ride a bike, you'll start to feel it, and you'll start to feel. And what happens is over time is you have less tolerance. It makes no sense to you to go off that far. And so what happens is you're able to keep steady in it longer. And, Jill, that example is a good example. You see, and maybe that's a good example of you're engaged in that work. I am sure when you're doing the work in the days you did it, that you had your moments of doubt. Like you would get this problem, you go, oh my God, they changed the search engine, whatever works behind it, right? Oh my God, they made a change, right? And so in your mind, again, now you're off balance. You can feel off balance, right? Oh my God, I used to know this, and now they made a change, and this is going to ruin everything, and but even that thought showing up for you would be such a little mosquito, an irritating little thing that you would swat out of the way as you would kind of go back into, now, what is this problem? Like, what's the change that was made? How does this actually work? Like, you'd be back in flow in no time. I would have, in that, gone, they changed it just when I figured it out. This is a disaster. Now everything is ruined, right? Like, so notice I stayed with it, right off balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's where feelings guide you. They're
Yeah.
guiding you back to alignment.
It's so interesting how it's the personal stories get in the way. Like there were times where I thought, well, what do I know? Me, just a mom at home playing on the computer all day, and I'd go to a conference, and then I'd listen to everybody else talking at the things, and I'm like, well, they don't know anything either, and I'd be right back in it again. But you know, your own personal story can affect you like that. But also what you were saying about you know, enjoying the better feelings and not wanting to be there anymore. I mean, I think in today's world, literally today's world, with what's happening, and this is beginning of April 2020, when the virus is, you know, gone mad, or people have gone mad. It's you know, I can find myself suddenly future thinking, you know, what if this happens, what if this happens, and then I like wake up. It's like a daydream I'm in. I'm watching this movie in my head about all these what ifs, and then suddenly I wake up literally and from this daydream and be like, why do I why am I doing this? And then I just go on to something else, and I feel fine again. But it's funny how you can easily get caught up in that movie in your head.
Really, really good example of a couple of things. The one is that all of this, your point of power, all of your power is in the present moment. The best version, you know, all that you are, potential and possibility, is only available right now. Only available right now. It's actually not available tomorrow. And it is not found yesterday either. So when you're riding the bike, balance is achieved right now. Now, if I'm riding the bike and I begin to think about, you know, this is all well and good because I'm on a paved street right now. I ride off my street, but pretty soon I'm going to be in a park. And in a park, it's not paved. And so they have more of a gravel road. And you know, I'm not really as good on the gravel road as I am on the pavement. And so I don't know, I'm a little worried about whether, and what if what if there's a rock or something? And if it rained, I mean, that changes the surface too. So now my thinking has gone out. By the way, how well do you think I'm even riding here now, that my attention has gone to what's going to happen a mile down the road once I hit the park, and now I'm there. So again, your point of power is in the now. And if I'm riding and I'm present and I'm now, when I'm on the pavement, I'm as I have more ability and skill to be back in balance on a dirt road as I do on a paved road, despite my experience with it. But just the fact that I'm at least present and focused, I will have more ability to remain in alignment. But if my attention is anywhere else, that also becomes a clue and an indicator that you are this is a too strong a word. You are disconnecting. You can never disconnect. You can never disconnect. This is the same energy that is breathing you and beating your heart. You can't disconnect from that energy ever. So don't worry about that. That's kind of cool. It's always there. And you can feel whether you are resonating with it or whether you've gone off in your head somewhere. And that's what feelings provide. They are an indicator of that for you.
And that I had that analogy when we have a in our woods here, we have a reservoir that you can walk or run around, and there's a lot of roots in the ground, and you have to be really careful, especially if you're trying to run it, which is sometimes impossible in some parts of it because it is so rooty and rocky. And I found that you know, there's a certain, you can't look too far ahead when you're going, because then you don't see what's right in front of you, and you will trip and fall, which I've done many times. but you have to, there's a sweet spot, you know, you look a little bit ahead and you're looking right where your feet are, or something. There's this, and so it to me seems like life too. You can't look, you know, you can get the big picture for a second, but you have to keep your eye just where you're going, you know, right on the path in front of you.
Yeah, so really good, really good. Okay, let me check in. I see some typing, and then I want to know if, does anybody want to get in?
We
Otherwise,
do
I'll
have,
say,
Bria has a, her hand up,
awesome,
which,
let's do it. Yeah, let's do that
yeah. Okay, you're unmuted.
Okay, no, I just woke up, so I don't know how my voice is going to sound here. So when you were talking, I guess what came back to me is drumming. So I'm not like a professional drummer, you know, I'm not a drummer even, but I've been in drumming circles where, you know, you're drumming, right? And I found that if I just drummed, where you're feeling it and you're kind of like in the rhythm, you know, it goes beautifully. But the moment I start to think about it, all of a sudden I lose it. Like I can't do the rhythm. And I would think, gosh, I was drumming so well for the last 20 minutes. What happened? Why can't I do it anymore? And it was totally my thoughts. Like my thoughts somehow interrupted that flow of being able to drum. And if I wasn't thinking, you just kind of feel it. You sort of have the rhythm, and you know, you're drumming along beautifully, and it seems to go quite well. And whether or not you're truly a drummer or not, it just works really quite perfectly. But the moment the thoughts get in there, like, oh, am I doing this right? Oh, my hands, I don't know. It seems to block it or stop it or interrupt it in some way. And then all of a sudden it's all awkward, and you can't drum anymore. And I know I've thought too, oh, but I was drumming. Now what's happened? Why can't I drum now? You know? So that's what came up for me when you guys were talking about the flow versus the thinking, and I just remember that those drumming kind of experiences, right? So
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And by the way, so great to be talking to you live. You and I are connected on Facebook, and we're always not talking live, right? That's so great to be talking in a live way. So you actually point out that resistance is always, only, ever thinking. It is only ever thinking. That's what resistance is. And so the moment, and so it's always thinking. And so this is why, you know, those of us who have studied three principles, this is why that got said, that you feel your thinking, because resistance is thinking. There's no resistance without thought. And so thought is a blocking or limiting of this flow. So if you try to think of how to drum, because there's a lot to think about, okay? You gotta stay with what everybody's doing, and then you can't bang it too hard. You gotta do it in like this. So you try to think that through. You've lost the connection. You've lost it, because you were connected and aligned to something. It's an energy flowing through you. And again, notice your actions are actually flowing from something, as opposed to, well, okay, it's 3 o'clock. Now I'm going to do some drumming. Like, and I do this, and how I start is like this, and then I remember, if I remember this correctly, I start soft and then I get more, right? It's like, good luck with that. And now that's trying to figure it out from the formula of really good drumming. It's like, so now you've put action first. Can you tell me what to do? What's the practice? I want to be able to do something in order to get to where I was before, because yesterday I was in such a flow with the drumming. And or maybe you can watch me today and write it down, and then let me know what it is I did, because I'm going to repeat it again tomorrow, and I'm going to get back in flow. No, you're not. You can only feel your way there. You can never act your way there. You can never get there by anything you do. It's a feeling, and we all feel it. And you're You're achieving it all the time.
Okay. I've had the other experience, I don't know if maybe people have had this similar, where you're walking, you know, we walk, right? And we've walked all our life, and walking is just automatic and natural. I don't think about walking, I just walk. But I had to walk through people, like two people are standing on the sidewalk talking, and I have to walk through them. And especially if like two men are standing there and all of a sudden they're looking at me and I have to walk through them. All of a sudden, I don't know how to walk anymore. And I literally will almost have to force myself to put one foot in front of the other because my walking doesn't feel natural. Like all of a sudden it's like, I can't really walk. I have to make it. I make it happen because I have to get through those people. But as I'm walking through them and I feel stared at, or I feel like they're really looking at me, or, you know, and they stop talking and they start looking at me, I can't walk at that moment. And I remember thinking, well, I can walk. I've walked my whole life. Why is this so hard to do? And then once I'm past them, I can walk again. So it's the same idea. Like somehow my thinking, because I'm thinking in that moment, like, oh, they're staring at me. Oh my gosh, now I have to get through these people. And I feel embarrassed. And it's like, you know, awkward because they've stopped talking and they're staring at me, watching me walk through them, you know, the whole thing, right?
Really good. Yeah, really good. Because notice the interference of the thinking. By the way, you've now hinted at something, and those of you that know me know of my interest in creation and what is our impact into manifesting into the physical world. And you just hinted at something. Because when you are in flow, in the walking, without the thinking, it could be said from one perspective, it's not quite accurate, but it could be said that you are affecting all of it. So when you are in flow, notice how naturally everyone moves out of the way. And how often, really, do you see people crashing into each other in a park, right? On a city street, a busy city street? How often are you seeing people crashing into each other? Somehow there's some energy going on that is flowing. And when you get in that flow, it's like some sort of alignment with the entire world. So it could be said, from one perspective, it could be said you are affecting manifested creation. Could be said. I would have a lot to say about that, but in another place. I know there's a few more questions too, Jill.
Yeah, thank you, Bria.
Thanks, Bria. Great to be talking to you.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, we have Renata has her hand up. I will unmute. Oh, you might have to unmute yourself, Renata. There you go.
I'm doing that. I'm sparing everybody my face. It's waking up.
That's
I
fine.
haven't even looked in the mirror, so probably my hair's all over the place. That's
You
okay.
just look like me then.
Okay, I'm gonna put the darn thing in. We're all gonna say, I hope you're not taping. Yes, you're taping. Oh.
We are, and it will be public, so don't if you don't want to. It's fine.
That would be a hoot.
That's fine.
Listen, I'm simply very, very glad that I'm making it here today. I just have a night owl routine, so for now. I came in halfway. So if you already referred to this or it's linking to what you're saying, please go for it. On March 30th, one of Dominic's posts was, anytime you feel negative emotion, you are resisting something that you desire with thought. That resistance takes its toll on you, including physical body. I think I understand. I'm just going to say it in my own words to see if we're basically saying the same thing, you know, like one in English, one in French, or one in these words, one in these other words. You basically, from what I caught on so far, you're basically saying, if it doesn't feel great, negative emotion, like last few days for me, I didn't realize that my eagerness to participate with everything that everybody was offering was turning me back to trying to get the best information so I would be good in whatever, good in my head, good in helping people, good in everything. And I basically was simply physically in the moment, not following my own pace and rhythm, which feels good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're getting indicators from feeling, including physical, if you leave it long enough, right?
Well, in my case, psychosomatic queen.
Well, and so that's okay. It's all, the indicators happen even sooner, right? I mean, but they will manifest. That your resistance with thought will show up. And so for example, right now with the coronavirus thing, there, we are able to look out into the world, and really it is a world of potential and possibility. That's all it ever is a world of potential and possibility. Now, and I think most on this call understand what I mean. It's not like that there's a way that the world is. It is a world of potential and possibility. Even when we say that there is uncertainty in this world, it was stable before, but now you've got the coronavirus. So now everything's uncertain. My whole future is uncertain. Oh my God, because of coronavirus. What all it is you did not notice that you were living in this same world before. And here's the thing, you just didn't have this thinking about it. Every day that you have woken up for your entire life, if you pay attention, has been a completely uncertain day. You have no idea that you step out the door, you'll be hit by a bus. So nothing has changed.
Well, the bonus for me, if I may, for me is everybody's experience of it. Like you were saying, whether at a distance or passing by somebody, if I don't want to go, like if I want to go rational mind, I can say everybody's electromagnetic field can be interpreted by next door neighbor or across the pond's brain. That's the energy thing.
Yeah.
Meaning I can stand beside somebody in the elevator, and if it's a group like us, there's a good chance that my immune system will be 50% hemoglobin A better after 10 minutes. If I'm beside somebody who's totally distraught, and I didn't, even whether or not I pay attention, the next thing I know is I'm emotionally distraught. It's not always how I deal with it, how I interpret it. Definitely my choice.
Yeah, and something really important in what you've said, if you're not thinking it, you're not feeling it. So if you're not thinking it, you're not feeling it. We have all been, you can walk down the street and there could be a homeless person who says something, or there could be a person sitting in the park who says something like, the terror of the pollen that is flying through the air that is going to kill us. And if you're not thinking it, you're not feeling it. So they can say what they like. They can be as distraught as they are. They can have an energy that is so in panic and horror. But if you're not thinking it, you're not feeling it. So they're telling you that the pollen will get you, and you are naive because you don't realize the horror of pollen and what it can do. But again, you can only feel what you think. So if you adopt the thinking, if you are convinced of the thinking, you will be in the same horror. And now the question is, there's two of you in the horror.
Yeah.
If we are in a world where we need to find a cure for this virus, a vaccine, or if we need to find a way out of it, are we relying on the people that are in horror and panic about this thing that is going to kill us, or will we rely on the people who are in flow and accessing their genius as the people who will actually figure this thing out for us?
Okay. I'm going to go with flow because that's what's happening in an odd kind of way. From my body's perspective in the here and now, the necessity of simply being in the moment is becoming a habit. The kind of experience I want, thanks to conversation I'm not doing I'm flattering more one than the other, because there's many people here that through your sharings and your posts and your conversations have given me better, a better selection of, or a better story, better flow version of life. So what's been happening, oddly enough, I'm absolutely experiencing from the here and now, and there's no longer time for me to get lost in all the multiple negative versions that I used to do for 30, 50 years. Because there's the reality, there's like this, for me, there's like this weird, perfect balance of what's happening out there and how I need to be in my head. And it's not because I'm better, because I can't do more technically. I'm still physically, I'm going to call it turtle shuffle mode instead of the old way. And physically, it means I'm a night owl. And if I do more, if I slip out for the moment, out of the moment, the good feeling, which I'm getting reacquainted with. This is the story. So I'm aware that I have a story, and then I go back to here now, here now, here now. And long story short, in my case, I didn't realize that I don't listen to the news. So about 2-3 weeks before they decided to give us an official quarantine thing in the building where I live, because it's 50 years plus, and you have to stay home and everybody's freaking out. I usually, these last year, as I'm building back my physical health, I notice that every time people are getting a vaccine in November and they have partied too much after Christmas, I get some flu symptoms. When I was in total panic mode before, when I wasn't listening to the good feeling, when I was resisting that part, I would get a heck of a flu version, 2-3 weeks, more than on my back, totally out of it. People would go, you got like tons of fever, why don't you go to the hospital and everything? And I was accustomed to that for years and years and years, because my system was overwrought by negative feeling.
And Renata, I'm just gonna stop you for a sec, because we're on a track there around the link eventually to our physical body, which is, I think, what prompted your question based on. So we won't do that in this Zoom call. However, we can send you links. Dr. Bill Pettit does probably the best job of connecting for you the impact of thought on
actually, okay,
body.
And so we do have to wrap up soon too. So
there's a few more hands up, Jill. So
yeah, Rui, if he's still there, yeah, Rui had a question, and I got about maybe 10 more minutes, and I have my online yoga class. So if everyone,
hey Rui, how are you?
Hi guys, everyone. No, I wanted to make a comment and ask a question. So a comment was more in terms of it seems to me from what I'm listening, because it's hard to discriminate what is thought that creates the experience and what is like the thought, like the overthinking, like thinking about the experience. I think that could be helpful to separate as just to make a distinction that could be helpful. And so in following what you said, it seems to be there is a level of thought that is required for us to live and to be basically functional. And again, it goes back to balance, right? Like you were saying. And then there's too much thought that kind of takes you out of balance. Too little thought, there is almost no experience, probably. So I find it a good relationship in thought and balance. And the other thing is I heard this one time and it stuck with me, but I never paid too much attention, was that feelings are past. So once you become aware of them, they are already felt.
Love it. Wow.
Maybe we can discuss that on the next iteration of this one. But yeah, something that stayed with me. I would love to see other people's points of view around that. Yeah.
We'll have to make a series, Dominic.
Oh, you've been picking up from Michael Fall. He knows, he's the master at saying, well, we're now finished part 1, and will Dominic come back for part 2? He's got me up to, I think, part 4 on coaching, right? Anyway, but he's a master at this. But so Rui, this is really great because if we just go to the metaphor, and no metaphor is perfect, right? But you're not riding a bike without thinking, okay? If we see somebody, ride a bike without thinking, right? So there is a thinking involved in riding a bike. There is some of that. But the achievement of balance, of alignment, what becomes more important in that achievement is feeling than it is thinking my way to the balance. It's like, wait a minute, I think I'm too far right. I can't remember. I think they said if you feel like this, you're like, so you can't think, right? So you feel. However, so it's like you do need thinking. Otherwise, how could you engage? How could you even engage? There's a beautiful road and I'm going to go on it and I want to get to a place. So it's there, but even in that becomes this feeling. What I really related to when you said this is you said then sometimes this thinking compounds, and there's also something about how the thinking is, or the feeling and the thinking is past-based. There was this one vivid example. Don't ask me why, it's silly. I come down one morning, I have my coffee mug or something, or I guess I was up early. I have my coffee mug and I go put it in the kitchen. And I come back, I go back in the kitchen and there's my wife and you always leave the mug on the counter. This was a Saturday, right? What? I can't believe she would say this, because I can tell you right now, there's a lot of people listening. I do not always leave this mug on the counter. Okay? So when she said this, I had this reaction like, what? It's an indignation. And do you know how often I load the dishwasher? So I could tell I was angry. It's like, that is, I don't know, it's not respecting me, who knows what, but this is all thinking. I'm making it up. She's just saying I left my mug on the counter. So there's an immediate emotion to it. And I could see instantly in that moment, like, which way this could go. If I allowed the feeling to manifest from, it happens as in a being, which creates a feeling, which we then can express in words and actions. If I took that feeling and began to give it more manifestation through my words, if I gave it more manifestation through my actions, I can tell you how that Saturday was going to go. But I caught it. And in my and I was like furious, but I caught it and I kind of like walked back. I said, you know what, you're right. And I put it away and I walked back to my office. Now, so I kind of caught it early enough that it didn't turn into a manifested reality, at least in that way. However, Rui, your other point was, there was a lot of stuff then about, not only did I have thinking in that moment, but now there was a feeling, and I can tell you I started to have thinking about the feeling. I got angry. What kind of a person am I to get angry like that? I mean, what does that even say about me, that I would do that? And you know what? And I notice how much more thinking was now. And to your point, Rui, the feeling is in the past, but I'm not leaving it there. No way, I'm going to examine it a little bit. I'm going to bring it with me. And so now, you know what? I mean, what kind of a person does that? Just the fact that I'd be that angry. I mean, I could have blown up at her. This is terrible what I'm like. What does that even, what's my character like that I even felt that way? So more and more and more thinking, and the feeling carried with me, and I don't want this feeling. I want to get rid of it. I got to change it. It's all one big spiral. So thanks for that observation.
No, yeah, and as you were talking, it just leave the feeling there, right? That's kind of obvious.
if yes, and that's when you are in alignment, like really at your best. It makes no sense to look at that. It's gone, and it wouldn't make sense. But when you're not there, oh my God, this is worth examining. I think it speaks to my character. We should have a conversation about it and really dig into how come that's happening to me. Right? That makes sense from that perspective and makes zero sense from when, you know, the realization of who we really are.
Thanks, Rui. Well, I think this is a good time to end, because like I said, I have to get going anyway. And that was great. Thanks everybody for showing up, and thanks Dominic. It was a great conversation, confirming and putting words to more words to what I know as well. And I think everybody knows at some level, you know, we all know this stuff at some level. So we'll keep on, what did we call, what did you call it? Not moving towards the feeling, when we
follow. So
follow.
He said,
yes.
Follow the feeling.
We'll keep on following.
You're being called by that. And if you kind of keep in mind, nothing is more important than that I feel good. That doesn't mean I take a bath or anything like that, but I know that there's a true north there, that when I feel good and when I'm in flow, I am allowing all that I am to express through me. And so nothing is more important than to continue moving in that direction. That's where all of your genius is. That's where all of your problems are solved. That's where you are the most loving, the most caring, the most contributing in the world, is from that perspective. And so nothing is more important than that you feel good, and follow the feeling better and better and better, and taking you more and more and more into a state of greater and greater alignment. Thank you.
And just to clarify too, that doesn't mean, as you were saying before, when your wife said something about the coffee cup, you know, just to clarify, we're not saying when you're not, you know, in the genius feeling that it's bad or anything, because we're gonna constantly be in and out of it.
Abraham says, if you try to avoid, so the feeling is an indicator of the current state, right? So thought is creating. The thought is the creator. And when you think and focus in the direction of your desire, you will feel good. When you think in opposition to it, you will feel bad. Feeling is the indicator of the direction of your thinking. And to say that I'm going to change the feeling or avoid the feeling or not pay attention to the feeling, Abraham uses the analogy of, that is like looking at the gas gauge of your car and noticing that the gas gauge has moving closer and closer to empty. You're feeling worse and worse, and the gas gauge is going to empty. And what you say is, I don't like this. I am putting a happy face sticker on top of that gas gauge, because really the world is great and things are sunny. And you can try and do that, but it does not change anything. That feeling is to be paid attention to. The feeling is to be paid attention to. It will guide you to the right place.
Yeah, it's really a subtle difference between the sticking the happy face sticker on, you know, putting your head in the sand, which is what I did most of my life, which kept me happy, I will say. But
and if you take gas gauge, there is nothing significant about empty. When the gas gauge is at empty, it doesn't mean anything. It is not significant. It doesn't say that you are a bad person. As a matter of fact, if you drove up to, if you were driving your car and noticed it was going to empty and the light starts flashing, and you stopped and decided to process your feeling, how did this happen? And how did this gas gauge? And what does this mean that the gas gauge would go to empty? It is simply an indicator. Go fill up with gas. You don't have to think about it, and you don't have to process it, and you don't have to talk to people about your empty gas gauge. Go fill up with gas. That's all it means. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. There's some nice comments on the side. I might be able to save them when I save the recording and send them to you,
Awesome.
Dominic.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Let me just quickly do an unmute so everyone can say goodbye. You're all unmuted now.
Bye.
Catch
See
you
everybody.
all on Facebook.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.